Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. You are listening to a rebroadcast of a previously recorded show.
We're live at the Mind Book Fair, the Neil Haley Show, powered by Life Improvement Radio. You can go to neilhaley.com right now and check it out. Connect to me all my social media networks. I have my co-host Eric Remmel from Life Improvement Radio, Life Improvement Media, and Peter Elvidge of the Perseverance Network. And this guest is going to be quite interesting. And I'm excited to welcome the program. He has a moniker as well. I love it. And so he has a gimmick, as I would say in professional wrestling from my days in pro wrestling. Dwayne, My Fish Booth, author of And Then the World Blew Up. Dwayne, thanks for calling. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great.
Awesome. So let's talk about how you became a political cartoonist. Tell us the story where you, so we can know your age and kind of what first cartoons were interested you to be in this genre.
I actually hated political cartoons. I actually dropped out of college to be a sort of contrarian, dangerous playwright philosopher. Every parent's dream, right, to drop out of school and just insist that I was a genius to them. And I really was looking at a lot of political magazines only because I was interested in the verbal content. And I saw that the cartoons seemed not to be engaging in the kind of debate that I wanted to get into, which is the humanitarian concept of, who we are and where we should be going. So I thought I could, enter into the argument in a different way and neither take the position of the right or the left. And then I just started getting published. And the reason I'm called Mr. Fish is because when I was doing that, again, I was a 19-year-old insufferable know-it-all dropout. And my last name is Booth, and George Booth is a famous cartoonist for The New Yorker, and I couldn't use his name. And I couldn't use Dwayne because, Cher and Madonna were already using sort of first name significance, and I wasn't going to try to pull that off. So I attempted to name my stepfather's new bird that my mother got him for Father's Day. And Mr. Fish seemed like the perfect name for a pet. And when it was rejected, I decided to use it. And then I immediately got published with it by a publisher who insisted that he'd been following me for 30 years or something, and said he's always been a big fan of Mr. Fish, and it's great to have Mr. Fish in this magazine. So it was sort of, it was, it all of a sudden became mine, even though I'd had it for maybe 4 days.
Wow. Okay. All right. So that's a mouthful of the story. Now, let's talk about political cartoons. Now, look at this now today. It's perfect fodder for you with what's happening politically now, right? I mean,
it is. It is. But it's also problematic because as we move forward, when it comes to satire, satire actually relies on some subtlety. In satire, when you're complaining about something overtly, usually its greatest significance is that it's about something else. Like in the 70s, if you were a cartoonist and you drew, say, Henry Kissinger, for example, it wasn't just Kissinger. Kissinger represented something and then represented something else. It had many layers. The political climate is such right now that it's oversimplified. So it is really challenging to have what I would argue is a political conversation that has been dumbed down to the point that it's difficult to find something intelligent to say about it.
Yeah, for sure. It's gotten so dumbed down. Go ahead, Peter. I know you have a question.
I was just curious because when making the cartoons and then making the visuals, like, how does that work? Like, you're looking at the current politics or the story that you're trying to convey to people. How does that work when you're looking at the side of it and then trying to figure out kind of the visuals and the style to put it into for the comic? Is there any particular artist process, or is it just kind of a as you feel kind of thing?
No, that's a great question because it's one of the things that I've gotten early on in my career when people were trying to turn me into a successful cartoonist. They insisted that I brand myself and figure out what the visual language that I should use. Like, essentially, you should be able to look at my cartoon from the other side of the room without reading it and say, hey, that's a Mr. Fish cartoon, like it's a Zippy cartoon or a Peanuts cartoon. And I never adhered to that because depending on the subject matter, sometimes there's some political conversations you want to have that are going to be very, very serious. So for those types of comment, that type of commentary, I tend to draw hyper-realism, where I can show, treachery and agony in a way that is serious and much more of a journalistic approach rather than like a comic book approach. But then sometimes when you want to, ridicule the buffoonery of a particular political personality, then you can use more comic book approaches. So definitely the rendering is really important and ultimately how you want your message to be received.
Huh. Definitely.
Great.
Eric, do you have a question for Dwayne?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, because our current political landscape is quite entertaining at the moment. Have you found yourself with a lot more readily available content or things that you can cartoon about now with all this fun stuff going on in our country?
Oh, it is so fun. Everybody's having such a fun time with all of this, aren't they? Yes and no. I mean, in one way, there's a lot of participation that's going on with the general public. Like, everybody can have an opinion now about what is either right or wrong with the current political landscape, right? Because it has been oversimplified, so therefore people they feel there's access, So more people have an opinion, but at the same time, sometimes I think it's the wrong opinion in the sense that it's too simplistic and it avoids much deeper conversations we should have. For example, when you have somebody like Trump being a very loud personality, and for the people that love him, say, wow, look, he is the government, he is America, and this is why America is going to be great. And then you have the people who absolutely find him reprehensible, who say, this guy has got to be gotten rid of and removed from that office as quickly as we can, and then everything will be fine. And what that ignores is the apparatus that surrounds the office of the presidency and how power really, truly manifests itself in this country. Because he's not a king. Trump is not a king, and Trump is not, despite the fact that he would love to think that he has absolute control and agency over the identity of America, it's just not true. So I feel like it's my job to complicate the conversation and really get people to sort of engage in democracy much more than politicians and the current concept of what democracy means. Democracy means much more than simply voting every 4 years for the presidency or every 2 years for Congress. It involves in being engaged and active in between voting cycles, right? So it's while it is yes, everybody has an opinion about what is going on in the country now, but having an opinion is interesting, but engaging in politics is a different thing.
That brings up a good point that I was thinking about, because being, that technology and connection and all these great different things, with more people having opinions and then voicing their opinions, and then even, like, I know, for instance, like on YouTube, there's a lot of cartoonists and animators that do their things on YouTube. Have you found yourself to be all of a sudden thrust with tons of competition, or is there something that's really diversifying you from everyone else, whether it be the visuals or the politics that you cover?
I do feel that there is. That's a good question, because I would argue that the artists who have been using art as commentary, particularly for politics, they actually predate even magazines and newspapers. So they've always been there. The fact that technology has enabled them to be seen more can sometimes feel like there's a great deal of camaraderie, which is a good thing, and it's sort of, we're able as artists to congregate around the same sense of injustice. That's good, but just as I was saying before, the danger is when you have this multiplicity of ideas congregating, and I might tend to think that it's an oversimplification of what is happening. So basically, sometimes I feel like I'm surrounded by mediocrity, and I'm not saying that just because I want to, promote myself right now as being just fantastic, but just like any group, any group that sort of has the opportunity to talk about complicated issues, they tend to get oversimplified, so everybody can sort of engage in the same debate or conversation. That might be a deterrent that, emotionally and psychologically it might be satisfying and give your physiology the feeling like you're not alone. But as far as applying concepts of change or how to untangle certain oversimplifications, it can actually be a deterrent to that, because just like you were saying about with social media and with these new technologies that enable us to see more people involved in conversation, really it's a virtual reality that is made up of individuals in front of a laptop or a screen somewhere. We're not really congregated around in public spaces or seeing real people in real time. And again, that is also its own danger, because then you get the illusion that you're part of a mass movement or a mass understanding, but it's really made up of isolated people who are not truly engaged with each other.
Very interesting.
Thank you.
So now let's just take the point of view, the political cartoons. Do you stick with mostly the more do you do the left and right and center when you create some of your political cartoons, or do you have a specific area of what you like to put out there?
It's the humanitarian concept of that's my approach to politics, because what I do is my methodology on how I create my stuff is I go to mainstream sources. I'll go to Google News and see what basically most people are saying, which is the mainstream take on politics. And then it's my job to say, well, this is sort of the homogenized corporate idea of what is wrong. And it also has those kinds of fixes on how we can improve things, which generally, when it comes to politics, is we've got to get the complaint worded in a way that is, the least obscene and the most, again, homogenized. Get that to the right bureaucrat in his or her inbox, so then he or she can share it with a committee, so that then they can agree on what to do and strategize on how to, again, oversimplify this thing. So in the end, you end up with a solution that is very far removed from the initial problem. That's generally how politics have worked over the centuries. So I feel like it's my job to look for the real heroes and villains in political conversation and try to get my readers to have some critical thinking involved and some way to connect with the problem in their own personal lives, in their own personal communities, and do something that has direct action connected to it. And it doesn't even need to be like, okay, let's go into the streets with torches and pitchforks. It's not even about that. It's about learning how to be as honest and engaged as you can and avoid the fear and the muzzling that comes from manners and not following the proper protocol when it comes to engaging politically. Like I said, not just relying on voting and politicians to
All right.
control the direction of the culture.
Perfect, Dwayne. Where can we purchase your book and learn more about you? Where's the best place we can go?
My website is clowncrack.com, and if you go there, you can find everything that I do. I also am a regular contributor to Truthdig.com. I'm also there.
All right. Well, thanks for calling. Best of luck, and thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
All right, take care. Okay. Bye-bye. You're listening to the Neil Haley Show, powered by Life Improvement Radio, live from the Mind Book Fair, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own and shall not be construed in any way as advice from Life Improvement Radio. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our website. Personal perspectives expressed by the producers, writers, or editors will always be presented as such. Any rebroadcast or retransmission without the expressed written consent of Life Improvement Radio is strictly prohibited. Thanks for listening.